Goodbye London and New York. Hello Asia. A massive underground ocean of investor money is quietly moving from west to east, money managers are saying. And as new Chinese, Indian and Indonesian firms head for stock market listings, the trend can only accelerate. Now this eastward flow of cash is largely hidden by the focus on short-term results, but will ultimately be a game changer, analysts are saying. The London Stock Exchange is broken, a company boss said on April the 10th as he delisted his shares. One of a number of CEOs doing the same thing. He says he might head across the Atlantic to the US. But Wall Street itself is struggling with a similar problem. There too, the number of listed firms is shrinking. But I hear you say, isn't the US economy thriving and the Chinese economy struggling? 差不多, as we say in Hong Kong. That means kinda, sorta, maybe-ish. Today's lead story in the FT says, US to grow at double rate of G7 peers this year, says IMF. Sounds good, until you read the small print, which says that US growth will be just 2.7%, meaning G7 growth is half that. The world's most powerful money manager, Jamie Dimon, complained about this specific issue recently. He said, for over 2 decades, since 2000, America has grown at an anemic rate of 2%. In comparison, China's GDP has grown at an average rate of higher than 9% a year and kept that up over the past 3 decades. That's the big picture in economic terms. But let's zoom in on the issue of stock markets. Never mind that some markets are down and some are up. Top analysts today are looking at numbers of listed companies over the long term and finding an interesting trend. Let's start with Wall Street. Jamie Dimon noticed that the number of listed firms in Wall Street has been quietly falling for many years. From their peak in 1996 at 7,300, US public companies now total 4,300. The total should have grown dramatically, not shrunk, he said in his annual letter released recently. Other finance specialists agreed with him. Indeed, strip out the Magnificent Seven, as the major tech companies are known, and the US market has performed almost as badly as the British one, said Matthew Lynn, writing in the UK Daily Telegraph. The number of listed companies has plummeted, and the amount of money raised in London listings in the past year fell to a 15-year low. London for many years was the world's biggest stock market, measured by capitalisation. Today it's fallen to 7th place. Why has London done so badly? There are several issues, but one of the biggest is the rise of the US tech giants. The UK made the exact same mistake as the European Union nations have already admitted to making. They all sat back and allowed the 7 big American tech giants to dominate global business and global equity markets. Thus, the US has become the world's tech capital at the expense of the UK, Europe and pretty much everywhere else. In fact, the only place in the world that went to the trouble to create its own tech giants was China. In that sense, China's Great Firewall has turned out to be a financial lifesaver for that country. Who would have thought it? So, if stock market systems are suffering in London and New York, where are they growing? The short answer is Asia. Now, Hong Kong was more successful in stock market launches than both London and New York for many years, before it was hit by US-backed troubles in 2019, problems which have continued with a huge program of Western sanctions and deeply unfair attacks from the West. To give just one example, travel advisories from Western countries often indicate Hong Kong is not a safe place to visit, a fact which every single person who comes here can see is just a ridiculous lie. It's one of the safest cities on the planet. This is one of many deeply unfair attacks on our community. Most Hong Kong people have sadly got used to this awful treatment. Our stock market may be in a bit of a slump, partly as a result of this. Yet if we take a big picture look at the number of listed companies per million people in Hong Kong, we can see steady growth. Last year, 73 new companies went public in this city. So it's still in growth mode where it counts. And the story is even better if we look north. Unlike London and Wall Street, the Shanghai Stock Exchange has doubled the number of companies listed over the past 10 years. Beijing Stock Exchange is new. It started with just 10 listed firms in November 2021 and now has 236 companies. Shenzhen's stock exchange has grown from literally nothing in 1990 to more than 2,000 companies now, and new ones added every year. India and Indonesia are also adding new companies to their stock exchanges, and some of them will be huge. Let's not forget, 3 out of the 4 biggest nations in the world are in Asia. In human terms, Asia by itself is bigger than all other regions of the world put together. Asia is big, and so are its companies. Shein, for example, grew from nothing to being one of the world's top garment makers. BYD came from nowhere to be the biggest maker of electric cars in the world. China now sells more mobile phones globally than iPhone or Samsung. Nothing can stop the great shift eastwards, said Matthew Lin. Much as you might expect, equity trading is just going where the money is. There are inevitable bumps along the way, but the Asian economies are growing a lot faster than the US and dramatically faster than anywhere in Europe. Now, these admissions from Western specialists are important. Let's get back to Jamie Dimon. Now, he's very much a US exceptionalist who insists that the US should dominate Asia in the name of Western democracy, a position that any critical thinker will recognize as being shockingly anti-democratic. But even Dimon admits that the best performing governments in the world, in terms of economics, are not the Western ones. Over the last 20 years, China has been executing a more comprehensive economic strategy than we have, he said. And there we have it. The whole demonization of China thing is not going to stop. But more and more voices, East and West, will be telling the truth. Eventually, the truth becomes too big to hide. And that's actually good news for everyone. Peace.